Hey there, students. This is Mr. Phillips, and today is episode 4 of my top 5 lit list for Animal Farm. Just sit back and relax. Let's talk about the top 5 things I think you should know from chapters 8, 9, and 10. Let's do this. Starting things off, let's talk about me for a moment. Now I know the music this episode is kind of sad. That's because the story gets kind of dark. But let's give a life update for me, which is the very opposite of sad at the moment. I'm recording this episode about 2 days before my wife's due date. So hopefully you're going to be getting an update soon on how things went at the hospital. If you need me, obviously I'm still going to be available during my office hours. Just know that I might be helping my wife deal with a newborn, and that's so exciting. I'm still going to help you get the year done right, but I may have my hands full from time to time, and I'm excited to share that with you, so just stay tuned. That sums up my update pretty well, so let's get into the latest reading, chapters 8, 9, and 10, the last chapters of Animal Farm. And yes, the music is sad because it's not really a happy ending. First on the list, number 5. At number 5, we have your propaganda assignment. I wanted to talk about this because it does have a lot to do with the book, and you'll see why in a second. So we are kind of using Animal Farm to get a view into the power of propaganda. And really in Animal Farm, it is clearly used for bad intentions, for evil, unless, of course, you've read the book and you somehow side with Napoleon. That would be a very interesting perspective to take. But your propaganda assignment is to choose 5 techniques of propaganda that we might have seen the pigs use and make them work for your own propaganda purpose. Now, the topic is nothing too divisive or too serious. For example, you would want to argue that unicorns exist or that Thor is the strongest Avenger. Something like that. We don't want any serious topics like gun control or anything else that you can think of, because this is supposed to be focused on the propaganda techniques itself, and we're not really trying to convince people that unicorns exist. We're just trying to get familiar with writing propaganda, which is helpful because if you can write propaganda, then you can recognize it a lot easier. So after you pick your topic, you have to pick 5 of these techniques. I'm going to go as quick as I can, go through these techniques, hopefully also with a example from the book. So the first technique of propaganda is called name calling. And name calling is linking a person or an idea to a negative symbol. That's when Napoleon and Squealer start calling Snowball a traitor. A traitor is obviously a negative thing, and so they try to link Snowball, who isn't necessarily bad, right, to that negative word, so people start to think that he is bad. Another technique is called glittering generalities. That's where it's the opposite. You link a person or an idea to a positive symbol, and that's basically where they refer to Napoleon as the leader or a hero when he really hasn't done much to earn that heroship. Another technique is called transfer, where you link the prestige of something that is well respected to something that you want people to accept. A little hidden propaganda technique is when Boxer is saying Napoleon is always right. And the animals buy into that because Boxer is so well respected that his saying transfers the respect to Napoleon, which is a tricky one, but that is transfer. The fourth one, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4, yep, is testimonial. A testimonial is where a public figure or celebrity promotes or endorses a product, policy, or whatever the propaganda is. Like when Mr. Whymper is telling humans that Animal Farm is great, right? His testimonial goes a long way. Another one is plain folks technique, where you are attempting to convince the audience that a prominent person, right, shares the ideas of the people, that Napoleon's ideas are actually the people's ideas. And that kind of be like the common people in Animal Farm might be the sheep, when they start chanting 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. Like the plain folks believe the same thing as Napoleon. That's a plain folks argument. Another one, as we're continuing our slug through the techniques, is called bandwagon, and that makes the appeal that everyone else is doing it, and so should you. In the Animal Farm book, we kind of see it as when animals shame other animals for not working or following the rules. Kind of everyone else is following the rules, you should too, kind of a thing. We know bandwagon more in real life as like, there's a winning team and you should follow this team and like this team. That's more of a bandwagon that we're familiar with. Another technique is playing on fear. So a fear technique is playing on deep-seated fears and warning the audience that a disaster is going to occur if you do not follow a particular course of action, aka Squealer saying, surely you don't want Mr. Jones back, do you? And everyone's like, no, we don't. That'd be terrible. Another one is bad logic. That's if logic is manipulated deliberately to promote a cause. I like to also use the Mr. Jones coming back example because they keep using it even though clearly he's not coming back. It's been way too long, too many years. He's not coming back, but that bad logic still manipulates them. And finally, we have unwarranted extrapolation, which is making huge predictions about the future on the basis of a few small facts, aka telling everyone that the food stores are full, or that, these are Snowball's footprints and he destroyed it. That's a huge thing, or a prediction about the future. He's going to come back because I saw his footprints. Based on a few small facts, that is unwarranted extrapolation. I hope that I said that right. So there are a lot of them to choose from. I just am asking that you choose 5, and there is an assignment that goes into that. So those are the propaganda techniques, and that starts our list at number 5 today. Number 4. At number 4, we have all of chapter 8, and something I want to highlight is the killing and the drinking. So at the end of chapter 7, Napoleon basically has now the fear and influence to start changing the rules. You might remember at the end of chapter 7, they had a couple executions and things like that. And they've already changed a few rules, right? The beds was one of the rules we talked about, but we have 2 different rules here. The animals afterwards are thinking to themselves, they collect their thoughts and they say, I thought we weren't supposed to kill any of the other animals. And soon enough, the pigs change the rule, and it says, instead of no animal shall kill, it says no animal shall kill without cause. Similarly, another rule that's changed is no animal shall drink alcohol, and then that is mysteriously changed to no animal shall drink alcohol to excess. And we can talk right now about why this happens. So the pigs discover whiskey, which is the hard alcohol, after the second attack. That's right. There's a second attack on the windmill. A bigger group of men storm the farm, and they push the animals into the barn, and the animals are looking through the barn from safety, and they notice that the windmill is going to be blown up. The men blow up the windmill is destroyed. And there's a huge thing we need to talk about here is Boxer is upset, the animals are upset, but the pigs, after they rally the troops and kick the men out, say, wow, what a great victory that was. That's a propaganda moment where that's kind of like a bad logic, right? It's manipulated. The logic there is manipulated to promote a cause that they wanted. Instead of focusing on the windmill is destroyed, how sad, the pigs want to focus on, hey, we won another battle. That's something for you. And after that battle, they discover whiskey. And they're feeling bad because the windmill they worked really long on and is now gone. So they discover whiskey. They think they're going to die because they don't know what it's like to be drunk. And the next morning, Napoleon bans it. But then when he recovers, he's like, wow, that was kind of fun. And then he changes the law so that the pigs can drink. And obviously the pigs are the only ones with access to alcohol. But I think that's another key step in the wrong direction. And by the way, who also was drunk all the time? Mr. Jones. So at number 4, we have chapter 8 with the emphasis on killing and drinking. Number 3. Number 3, we have Chapter 9 and Poor Old Boxer. We learned that in Chapter 8 during the attack, Boxer kind of hurt his hoof. And we also see that he is older now. He's got old lungs. Does he work as hard as he can still? Absolutely. But I believe he's 11 or 12, and he's looking forward to that age of retirement. I'm not sure for horses if it was 12 or if it was 13. It's not in my head at the moment. But he's working as hard as he can to help rebuild the windmill before he retires and can take his time off in the pasture, like the pigs promised. Are they going to follow through? We know now that they're not. But he works so hard, he collapses during work. He's bleeding, and he cannot work anymore. And this is where the admiration that I have for Boxer and everyone else on the farm has for Boxer turns into horror from Napoleon's rule. Because we get it. We know what Napoleon does. We see the animals are told that they're going to send Boxer to the hospital to get treated because of all the hard work he's done. And that makes sense. That would be a great thing for Napoleon to do, to show his most loyal worker, hey, great job. But instead, someone who can read, old Benjamin, is horrified when he reads that the van that comes to pick Boxer up does not say hospital, but it says horse knackers. And basically, he's taking him to the horse slaughterhouse to be turned into glue. And the animals try to tell Boxer to get out, but he's weak. He can't break open the doors. And it's so heartbreaking. We just see him slowly being carted away. And then who shows up for damage control? Of course, it's Squealer. And it just solidifies how kind of dirty and evil the whole operation is, because Squealer tells them that Boxer died during the operation. How sad is that? Chapter 9, Poor Old Boxer. Number 2. For number 2, we come to Chapter 10, which I'm going to refer to as the transformation. And it shows us years passing. Chapter 10 is the last chapter, and every animal on this farm is getting older. A lot of them have already died. Some of the animals that don't live as long have already had multiple generations come. But the tales of the past revolution have been shared. But no one but really the oldest animals really know what the original rebellion was about. Of course, Benjamin the donkey's there. Clover is still there, but she's very old. And the pigs are older. Napoleon is older. He's still in control. And something very, very strange happens. One day the animals notice the pigs all do a little parade around the farm, and they're walking on 2 legs, wearing clothes. They are carrying whips, and it looks like they have come full circle. They are now emulating how Mr. Jones and his men used to run the farm, which should really send some chills up your spine when you think of how this started. Of all animals are equal, and no animal is going to be kind of, lord it over each other. And we're going to be, about equality amongst all the different animals. And here you have one animal clearly just trying to be an oppressor, just like the men. And even all the rules that they used to have are erased, and there's only one rule left. And even this one is a little chilling. It says, all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. That's the final rule. And really, we see the transformation in the pigs, and it's something very, very disturbing. Unless you're, of course, rooting for Napoleon and you want the animals to, be enslaved. I don't think that's the intent of the writer. And my top number 1 thing on the list today will tell you why. But at number 2, we have the transformation. Finally, number 1 on my list this week. As we approach our 15-minute mark, I know we had a lot to talk about today, so we'll probably go a little bit over, but number 1 is what I call the message. At the end of this chapter, and the transformation is happening. Let me set the scene. Mr. Pilkington, one of the rival farmers, has been invited by Napoleon to bring his men over for what looks like a celebratory dinner. And Mr. Pilkington stands to give a toast because they gave him a full tour of the farm. And Mr. Pilkington is like, wow, you guys have done a great job here at Animal Farm because you guys feed your animals less. They're in worse conditions, but you get them to work harder. So we're going to try and do that on our farms as well. And he sits back down, and Napoleon stands up and agrees with everything Mr. Pilkington says. But this is perhaps where we find the message, something probably the craziest thing, even though like there's been a lot of atrocities done. Napoleon says, you're right, Mr. Pilkington, but except for one thing, the name of this farm is Manor Farm. And if you remember, Manor Farm was what it used to be. So essentially, Napoleon has just supplanted Mr. Jones, and instead of Animal Farm anymore, it is now Manor Farm. And all the animals kind of were looking in through the window to give us a view, and they can't tell the difference anymore between the men and the pigs. They look the same, as if the pigs have literally morphed into men. And the animals are really disheartened at this. And as a reader, you should just get the goosebumps all over again. Like chapter 10 is a lot of the chills. But they hear a noise as they turn around sadly, walking back to their barn. They see and hear a brawl starting because the book is very clear. Napoleon and Mr. Pilkington basically both play an ace of spades, or maybe it's clubs. But they are basically both cheating, and a brawl starts. And if you compare Napoleon and Mr. Pilkington, you see, right, that men, pigs, they're the same. They're both liars and they're both cheaters. But I want us to think about, before I get to the call to action, would the animals have been better off with a, farmer who is a liar and a cheater? Or would they have been better off with a farmer who was a slackard and a drunk? That's kind of the message here. And if we get into symbolism, there's a lot more to talk about. But at number one, I want us to think about the message of Animal Farm. It's the end of the podcast. It's time for our call to action. Do you see any parallels to the real world? Anything that we might learn from this dark and dreary ending? Hopefully you fill out the Google Classroom survey and let me know what you think. Are the animals better off under the pigs? Or would they have been better off with Mr. Jones? Is there a third option that the author is trying to point us to and get us to realize, hey, there's a third way that is better here? And maybe that third better way would have been if the animals kicked out Napoleon instead of Napoleon kicking out Snowball. That's a lot to think through, but it's something that we can talk about as we continue. Thanks so much for listening today. It's been a little bit of a longer episode, but there was a lot more of the book to cover. I will be available if you need any help, and don't let the sad music get your spirits down too much, because you now are the propagandist and you get to write your own propaganda. Thank you so much for listening, and everybody, have a great day.